I found very quickly that what I had been doing in my process with my efforts to maintain a foothold in my son's life is I had been fighting and fighting and fighting in all ways. And within a few meetings, I sort of got the impression that what suited my recovery or general recovery best was not a fighting approach, but an approach of acceptance and letting go.
Hi, my name is Lawrence Strauss, and welcome to the Family Disappeared podcast. And today we have a really interesting show planned for you. We have some different folks from the community that we call newcomers. And newcomers are people that are new to the community, and they might be new just to the podcast. They might be new to the free 12-step program that our nonprofit runs, which is Parental Alienation Anonymous. And we have 18, 19 meetings a week. They're all free. They're on Zoom. There's a link in the show notes if you're interested in that. So we're going to talk to these folks about what it was like finding their way to PAA, what it was like, finding meetings, podcasts, other resources. And it's a really interesting conversation, and I think you're really going to enjoy it. If you're new to the community, welcome to the community, and we'd love to hear from you. Any input, any insights, any subjects you'd like us to cover, or just what you're feeling maybe. Our email is in the show notes, familydisappeared@gmail.com. There's a bunch of other great resources in the show notes. Please remember to like, share, comment, become part of the community, and thank you for coming out to join us today. And let's jump into the show. I remember how hard it was in the beginning of struggling with this parental alienation, estrangement, erasure, whatever you wanted to call it. I didn't have any kind of terminology. I'd never heard the words. I just thought developmentally my kids were going through something, and it was part of separating and getting a divorce, and everything would just pop back into place. And it was so incredibly painful and lonely, and I didn't know what to do. And I started going to support group meetings because there was nowhere else for me to go, and I was imploding, and the anxiety and fear was so out of control, and I didn't want to go there, and I didn't know why, but it was really because I wasn't working on myself in a really deep way on an emotional and spiritual level. And that might sound strange to folks that just want their kids back, but I just wanted my kids back, and I was desperate enough to show up at a meeting, and I was sure I wasn't going to stay very long, and I just wanted to get some strategies and ideas on how to fix my family, like I've said before. And it's opened up this portal into a world of worlds for me, and even us having this conversation together on a podcast is part of recovery. And I would not be here without the support of so many different people that were at my meetings that I went to in person, online, in my community, my friends. So this is a portal. This is like, if you're looking for like a magic carpet ride, this is an opportunity. And it's not easy, and it's not for people that need it. It's for people that want it, because it's a lot of work. And I'm talking about the 12-step community in particular. And the podcast is a really wonderful place to come and join us and learn a little bit about us and a little bit about parental alienation and estrangement, and what other people are going through, and victories and ways to deal with that. And that's my long-winded description of what I felt like as a newer person to this community, and I'm grateful to be here. And let's jump into this conversation. Hi, folks. So great to have you on the show. And just to requalify for everyone, this is a newcomer show. And when I say newcomers, it's a word we use in community here, which are just people that are newer to the community and just kind of finding their way and learning what feels good, what doesn't feel good, and even if the community is a fit for them. So newcomers is just the word we use, and you might hear us referencing that several times in the show. And I'm going to have everyone just introduce themselves to you, and we're going to do it within the context of what we do at a PAA meeting, which is our free 12-step community meetings that are incredibly supportive. And each person will have an opportunity to introduce themselves the way we do at meetings. And we do that at meetings just to build community, to build trust, to build safety, and consistency as well. So Mary, if you could just introduce yourself to the community, please.
Yes, thank you. Hi, Lawrence and Vanessa and Seth. My name is Mary, and I have three children, adults, 40, 37, and 34. My youngest has alienated herself from me. It's been 3 years now, and she has two grandsons that I have not had a relationship with.
Thank you so much, Mary. And how long have you been around the community, Mary?
I found my way to PAA on the internet last September.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much, Mary. And Seth, if you could introduce yourself next, please.
Hi, my name is Seth. I'm an alienated father of a 12-year-old son. It's approaching his birthday and a year with no contact, and I consider him severely alienated.
Thank you, Seth. And just for context, roughly how long have you been around the community?
I showed up about 3.5 months ago.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Seth. And Vanessa, please introduce yourself to the community.
So I'm Vanessa, the alienated mom of an 18-year-old boy. I also have a 28-year-old girl who is not alienated but affected by the alienation. I was in a 25-year marriage and we divorced in 2018, so about 6 years ago, according to the date of this podcast. And I've been in the community, the PAA community, since about April of last year.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, welcome everyone, and thanks for taking the time out to come have a conversation with us. And again, just to contextualize where we are sometimes when we find community. And I know for me, when I found my original 12-step community, I was anxious, I was uncomfortable, I was desperate, I was lonely, I was isolated, and I didn't particularly want community. I just didn't know where else to go. And I'm curious for each of you, like, what were you feeling? What were you doing? What actually got you to join some part of the community? And Seth, I'm going to go with you first. If you could please share that a little bit with us.
At the point that I went to my first meeting, I was barely functioning. I could hardly leave my room. Just I would say, rock bottom psychologically, emotionally. I was smoking, for example, a lot, cigarettes. I just was shell shocked. And my mother, who tends to kind of often finds things in a pinch for me, she linked me to the podcast. And I was at a point where I was willing to try anything. And while I wasn't necessarily looking for a 12-step based scene, I gave it a try, and that's how I landed in my first meeting with PAA.
Thank you so much for that, Seth. And I want to also let the audience know, like, we're talking about PAA, which is Parental Alienation Anonymous, which is a free 12-step group. And some of us came in through the group, some of us came in through the podcast, some of us came in through other doors. So there's several doors, and different people participate in different ways in the community. And today we are talking to some people that are participating in the 12-step community as well. So Vanessa, what were you like? Where were you at when you found community?
So my son had moved out about 4 months before I started PAA, and what had happened for me was I thought it was just temporary, and we had somewhat of a relationship, even though the alienation had begun 2 or 3 years prior, just with him still living at home. And it became clear to me that I was carrying a grief that was just too heavy to bear alone. And so I contacted a grief support group that I knew in the city that I live in, and went. It was an open meeting. You could come anytime. And the leader of the meeting told me at the following meeting that I was not a good fit because I hadn't actually lost anyone, meaning no one had died. And I had, of course, been carrying such a heavy grief from the loss of my son that I thought I couldn't believe my ears. And so I did go home, and I just thought, I just feel so alienated from everything and everyone. I'd lost friends and family and my son. And that's when I looked up just on Google alienation, and one of the top hits was parental alienation. And I thought I'd never even heard of that. And so I clicked on the link, got the information, and went to my first meeting. And that's how I started.
Wonderful, Vanessa. Thanks for sharing that. And yeah, that grief and that well of emotion that we carry around, and we have nowhere to talk about or process it. And like you're saying, some groups can't hold that experience. And our community is really cool because we have people all over the continuum. Some people have contact with their kids, some people have no contact, some people have partial contact, and everyone's welcome. It's a safe place to land. And I'm hearing that that felt like a safe place when you landed here, Vanessa.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. And Mary, how about you? What was your life ecosystem like when you arrived?
So I'm heading into my fourth year of alienation, and when it first began, um, I was pretty devastated. I found a counselor, was with her for about 6 months, and I just felt that she was so ineffective in helping me or understanding me. I then got another counselor, and I would say the first year and a half I was functioning, doing the everyday, go to work, do the things you're supposed to do. But there was just such a cloud of grief over me. I think I had fallen upon on the internet PAA meetings, and I looked at it, read the description, and I said, "Oh, I don't think I fit here because my adult child alienated me. I thought it was more for divorce situations with younger children, so I didn't pursue it at the time, regretfully. And then I think the podcast started around the time I joined in September, and so it came to the forefront again, and I said, you know what, I'm going to go to a meeting, no harm, and see if there is a place for me at the table. And and I have not stopped since then. I felt that my story might be slightly different, but then again, everybody's story about alienation is different. And so that's how I started attending meetings, and I haven't stopped since last September.
Thank you so much, Mary. And you bring up a great point. Like we're all in different places in our stories, and some people use alienation, some people will use estrangement, erasure, disconnection, and it doesn't really matter. Like this is a big tent that we hold for everyone, and the meetings are a place where there are different perspectives and different experiences shared. I'd say my next question for everyone is going to a 12-step meeting or any kind of support group. Let's just open it up because some people are going to appreciate a 12-step meeting. Some people are going to find other groups, other communities they want to participate in. But actually showing up at your first meeting is awkward. Like, and that's my question. Like when you first got to your first meeting, did it seem awkward? Did it feel like, hey, this is silly, this isn't for me? Like what was that like for you? And let's start with Vanessa first.
Yes, I tend to be a very private person, so I was afraid of just turning on my camera at all, and afraid of exposure. I was afraid I didn't know what they would want me to share about my own personal life in order just to be there, and especially after just getting kind of rejected from another support group.
Yeah, and thank you for sharing that, Vanessa. And I think you shared a really important part is different people come in with different expectations and different emotional vulnerability. And some people like to sit back and just listen and kind of take it in before they jump in, and some people jump in right away. And we all kind of find our own way. And some people might go to one meeting in a week, some people might go to seven. So that the community can hold every experience. And this is just one of the doors. And some other people have mentioned the podcast, which is another wonderful door. And some people just participate in that door. And I'm going to go to you next, Mary. What was it like when you first got to that first meeting, and was it hard, or did you want to leave, did you want to stay, did you hate everyone? What did that look like?
Um, I had some experience with Al Anon probably 25, 30 years ago, meeting in a church basement. So I kind of had a flavor of what was going to happen, and I was really pleased that it was on Zoom, because just getting to a location for a 12-step meeting is a challenge in itself after you work all day and you have many other things. So I first went to a newcomers meeting, figuring that was the place I should start with. And I felt very, very welcomed. I listened. And then as the months began, I've moved around and tried to attend as many meetings as I can. And I think one thing I've learned is it doesn't matter if it says step 10 meeting and I'm only on step 1. You're welcomed at every meeting, and you can participate as much as you want, or you can just be a listener. And I think as the months have passed, depending on the way I'm feeling on a given day, I can go through a month of just being a listener at the meetings. But what is important to me is that I attend at least one meeting, if not a few per week, and I learn something every single time I go to a meeting. And uh, I had no fear or hesitation to begin. I was just overjoyed to be with people who understood my situation.
Thank you for that, Marion. You mentioned a couple things I just want to touch on before I get to Seth. You mentioned you'd been to Al Anon meetings before. And for people out in the community that don't know what Al Anon is, Al Anon's a sister program to AA, which is Alcoholics Anonymous. And it's for friends and families, and it's about relationships and how we relate to all other people in our life. And PAA is based on the Al Anon framework, and it's adapted for people that are struggling with alienation, estrangement, erasure, or whatever those other things are. And yeah, Seth, how was it for you at your first meeting? And did you have any 12-step exposure before your first meeting?
Yeah, I did. I went to CODA meetings, Codependence Anonymous meetings, about 12 years ago, and I appreciated them for this sense of I don't know, safety and a place for people to be authentic. But I remember feeling very sad in those rooms. I was sad anyway. And then later, about 3 years ago, I joined friends at AA meetings, which were kind of more uplifting. And I considered joining AA, but I would say to myself, well, I'm not an alcoholic, and I didn't really see myself as addicted, an addict of any particular kind. So when I got to PAA, I was a little taken aback because I thought to myself, I don't see myself as an addict. How does alienation, or how does my situation, how could my situation benefit from an approach that's meant tailored for addiction? I found very quickly that what I had been doing in my process with my efforts to maintain a foothold in my son's life is I had been fighting and fighting and fighting in all ways. And within a few meetings, I sort of got the impression that what suited my recovery or general recovery best was not a fighting approach, but an approach of acceptance and letting go. And then I started to see things in those terms, less about fighting and more about accepting of self and others, and letting go of this tight grip I had on my story being very unique or important, or having all the answers within itself. And then I started to look outwards and listen to people, and I realized that we were building community. And to me, in my life, the times where I've been able to participate in building community have been the most growth-filled times. So that's how I look at it.
Thank you for that. And a common theme that I heard through everyone's share is kind of like finding community. And also people mentioned that they landed somewhere where they didn't have to explain what they were talking about. And I think that's a really important thing to talk about and to acknowledge about our communities. We're all struggling with different parts and pieces of a similar kind of puzzle, and we don't have to talk about like this is a puzzle piece and this isn't a puzzle piece. Like we all kind of have a lived experience. So that's such a wonderful thing about community. And someone had mentioned that even their family and their other resources and other community members couldn't necessarily understand them within community as within the podcast. Like we're talking a similar language, so people are like, oh yeah, that's what's happening. And I'm not sure if I mentioned this before, but some people have no experience with 12 step whatsoever, and some people have some point of reference, and some people have a lot of point of reference. And everyone's welcome, and everyone's kind of starting at the same place. So wherever you are welcome. And I want to step aside a little bit because we are talking about the 12 step program, but there are many doors to our community. And we are on a podcast right now, and a podcast is a really great door with a really low threshold where you can still participate in community. And I just wanted to get everyone just to share a couple minutes on the podcast store. Like, what has that meant to you? Has it been useful? Like, what do you take away from that? And yeah, just what that feels like, what that door feels like. And can you compare the difference in actually showing up in a meeting and just listening to the podcast something to that degree. So let's start with you, Mary.
The meetings are very structured like a 12-step Al-Anon meeting. There's a secretary, there's a leader, they read a script, and then people begin to share for 2 or 3 minutes, and there's a timer so that everybody in the Zoom room gets a chance to speak and talk about their recovery as well as their current issue they may be experiencing with the alienation. And what I like about the podcast is it doesn't have that strict structure of the meeting that we stay on task. So the podcasts have panels of people which each bring in their shared experience, and it's more free flowing. So we say more than what we may say in a meeting, or we touch upon different subjects. And I've listened to the podcast from day one, and I do go back if I'm driving for a long time, and I'll start at the beginning, because every time you listen, you learn something different you didn't hear the time before. And I like that you have some expert guests on that, are psychologists or experts in the field of alienation. And all those tidbits of information, I believe, are collectively helping in my recovery. So it's not only the meetings, or it's not just reading the 12 steps, or just being with my pod. It's a combination of many other things, including meditation, including therapy, including exercising and eating right, that are all helping me recover in the best way possible.
Thank you for that, Mary. And how about you, Seth? How are you feeling about the different doors and what they do for you, and the thresholds that come along with entering the different doors?
Um, yeah, the podcast for me was part of one of the early doors when I was kind of educating myself about parental alienation and hearing all the many voices in the different communities of experts. And so that was the door that I opened when I was learning about PAs, psychologically speaking and emotionally speaking. So it kind of comforted me at that time, a few months back. But I find now that I joined the group and that I go to regular meetings, that I listen to and you know listen to less podcasts in general about PA, because I'm focusing more. I've confirmed that that my situation is an alienation situation, and I know who the players are. I know more about it. I don't feel the need to like pick that scab, so to speak. I know that I'm in a healing mode, and that involves my own self-reflection within a group and accountability within a group. So the podcast is something I might listen to in the car, or um, if I had a little bit of space where I wanted to do a little bit of a deeper dive into alienation situations and get a little more insight.
Thank you for that, Seth. And I really appreciate you bringing up the nuance, because I think a lot of us experiences that early on. We're reading, we're talking to professionals, we just want information. We're just so hurt and angry and confused and have all this longing. And then we do get saturated from that. And I think that's a really interesting inflection point that you spoke about, from educating, getting, and then starting your actual recovery work within the community, and then your needs shifting and not having to pick off that scab and feel that pain and dig in and get more information. Because at a point, I know for me, like, I'm saturated. Like, I don't need to listen to anyone else today. I need to get support and work on my own inner ecosystem. And then there's times in my life where I want more information, and I come back out. But I think that something so important about our community is it's a different opportunity to heal where it's internal and not external. And that's what I heard you say, Seth. Did you want to add anything to that little thought before I move on to Vanessa?
No, I really do think that it's internal and not external in that regard. But these are resources: the podcasts, the books, the experts. There's other organizations out there too. So PAA as a whole is a diverse kind of community with a lot of resources. But there's other stuff too that's worth I mean, helpful. That has been helpful to me beyond the group and the podcast. So this is my anchor. This group is my anchor.
Thank you for that, Seth. And how about you, Vanessa, on the different doors and what they mean to you and how they feel?
Yeah, I'd like to second everything that was just said. For me, the podcast is informational, and I love the way that there are experts that we can listen to and get a very concise explanation without having to dive into our own research. We can just hear it in the car and anywhere. But the meetings themselves have a very different purpose for me. They're a chance for me to connect with other people who have had similar experiences. And they're also, even though I'm a very private person generally, they're a chance for me to be seen and heard and understood completely. And I think that the meetings really provide that when we can hear other people's stories that reflect our own. Some of the details may be different, but they're the same exact misery of losing our kids, either temporarily or just the journey that we're all on, is extremely validating. And to be to hear their stories and to also have my story heard is very important. I know for me, I spend time before a meeting and I think to myself, what am I processing today? And to be able to have a place to put that and have other people witness my own journey is a huge element to my healing in this process.
Thank you for that. And again, you brought up a really important point, like being seen and heard. And I'm presuming a lot of people struggle like with this feeling before finding community. Like no one really gets it. Family, friends, parents. It's really, really hard because this is a really unique and internal experience. And in community, people can actually see you, understand you, empathize with you, not judge you, and you don't have to explain anything. So I love that you clarified that a little bit with just those really simple words. It's a place to be seen and heard, and actually held in court too. Because so often I find in my life people just drop me because they don't know what I'm really saying and they feel uncomfortable, so they just kind of move through the conversation, and I don't get those things. So those are beautiful aspects of that. And this is a pretty heavy conversation. So anyone out there that's listening, like let's just take a breath together and just acknowledge, wow, this is a lot. Finding community is a lot. Our stories are a lot, and it's tiring. And those are all real. And I just want to move gears here a little bit, and let's just talk about. Let's share what's something really great, uplifting, fun, or some kind of change that's happened in your life because you are part of community, that you can share something really positive and uplifting that people can hang on to it amidst this really challenging journey. So let's start with you first, Seth. Is there something you can share that would maybe make someone smile or just go, oh yeah, I'd love to feel that too.
Humor has returned to my life. For a long time, I forgot that I like to laugh and that I can be funny and that I can see humor and laughter in life. It's summertime here. There's a lot of flowers. A lot of them smell great. So I take every opportunity to enjoy the smells and colors and the ocean where I am. Everywhere where we are, there are things to appreciate, and even if things are difficult, there's an opportunity to be curious and to learn. So that's maybe what I'll offer and leave it there.
Thank you. Yeah, and I'm just going to share a little funny story. I remember going to my first meetings, and I'd go to the meetings, and I'd walk in, and there'd be people laughing, and I hated them. I'm like, how dare you laugh? This is serious. This is it. You know what I mean? And I couldn't feel or think anything outside of my thoughts and the stuckness, and people were laughing. And this old timer used to get up and share life is life is made for living, and I live a good life. And I'm like, oh my God, I hate you. You know what I mean? And then my life started to change, and I started to laugh, like Seth said, and my life started to expand. And yes, I miss my kids. And yes, this is hard, but like life is rich and meaningful, and having community and people to lean into changed how I navigated the world on a daily basis. So, with that little shtick, I'm going to go to you, Vanessa. Like, what can you share about something really positive or fun, or something that has influenced your life from some additional support?
You know, I think that overall, knowing that I have a place to actually share the harder, more darker moments, the struggles, all of my other relationships now are a lot lighter. I'm not searching for validation. I'm not searching for understanding. I'm not trying to, when someone says, "So, how's your family?" I don't have to actually feel this sinking grief feeling. And how do I answer this question? I figured all that out now, and I can just give a light answer. And so that's one thing, just that all my other relationships aren't, I'm not depending on all of them. I have my own support that does understand completely in the meetings. The other thing is, I just decided one time about a month ago, just that this is a dark experience. There's a lot of loss and a lot of grief. And I just woke up one day and I said, you know what, today I am going to try to search for the beauty in life. And everything just suddenly appeared to me, just the flowers on the road, the birds that were swooping through my yard, the gentle rain, letting go of some of these friends.
So Vanessa mentioned a couple really interesting things, and so did Seth. And I'm going to get to you in 1 second, Mary, for you to share, some of your highlights. And both Seth and Vanessa mentioned the idea of outdoors and flowers and like maybe more life energy. And there's a thing in 12-step community called the pink cloud. And the pink cloud is usually the first 3 to 6 months in a program when you come out of this like dark chrysalis and you start to open up and you start to just peek out a little bit and see a little bit of light or see a flower. And it's just our bodies starting to regulate and land, and we're actually able to see what's in front of us instead of just being stuck in this closed door and in those thoughts and in as long as and in that fight or flight response. So it's really cool that you both identified that, and through any 12-step program you hear this being repeated over and over and over again. So it's really cool. It's really cool to see and experience. And Mary, what about you? What are some really positive highlights or some stuff that's maybe moved in your life?
I think as I may have mentioned, I came to PAA because I just felt, and now I know it's a pink cloud, but I thought mine was a gray or black cloud hanging over my head. And I was functioning and I was going to work and I was doing all the things I was supposed to do, but I was looking for joy, and I had lost my joy. And I would say it wasn't just the alienation. I think it had been, my life and my divorce and so on. And I just was like, I was doing it all, but I wasn't feeling the joy. And that's why as I've joined PAA and learning about my own recovery, I'm that cloud is lifting. So I was with my oldest at one point, and we were with my grandson, and she said, "Boy, there's something about you that has changed, Mom." And that's all she said. And I didn't come back and say, "What do you mean?" I just let it sit. And I felt a great sense of joy and happiness because she noticed something in me that was different but couldn't put her finger on it. And then that sent me to go reflect about myself. Yeah, that gray cloud, it's not as heavy and full of sadness as it had been. So the things that are changing in me are subtle, um, and I don't have to go to my sisters and cry and just weep in sadness anymore. I don't I don't know if they noticed that about me. I think one of them said it to me. And so now I can go to the PAA meetings, share what I need to share with a group of people who understand, and leave it there till the next meeting. So my changes haven't been, fireworks going off, but subtle changes over these months, and I'm so much happier.
Oh, thank you for that, Marion. I got goosies like, oh wow, something's changed about you. And I gotta tell you, like the magic of other people giving us a reflection or mirroring where we really are and that it's actually accurate is so beautiful and so life enhancing and life affirming. And just to get that reflection back, I just, yeah, it makes me smile and joy. Like, I think this is a topic like we're just going to spend 1 second on here. And so much of my joy was reserved for interacting with my children and playing with them and being silly and being a dad. And I also found when those relationships started to to disintegrate a little bit, like it was hard to touch joy, and it felt like I needed to reserve joy for there, and I couldn't really experience joy outside of that. And my personal experience in doing my own recovery work, whether it's through PAA or any other organization, because as Seth said before, there's a bunch of phenomenal organizations offering phenomenal resources, and this is just one. This just happens to be the one we're talking about on the podcast. And find what fits for you. If you love this, awesome. If you hate it, awesome. Find something, get community, be part of something. And joy has been such a huge part of my healing. And for me, I'll just share a couple of my things. I love to dance. I didn't start dancing until I started coming to 12-step group and just being free and moving and being silly and doing a lot of stuff within community where I'm just getting to express myself, which I didn't know how to do before I started going internal. So the joy just resonates greatly with me. And there's also a couple really interesting things. Did anyone want to say anything else about joy? Something else coming up in any joy bubbles here before I move on to the next part? I don't want to discount anyone else's joy because I'm stuck in my own little bubble in a second. Huh. I'm going to give a huh and a wow. I really enjoyed that first part of the show, and we did have a couple of technological glitches, and yeah, it's challenging and it's funny because you have these glitches and they're just part of life. They're just part of this process that we're all going through and we're all struggling through, where stuff just happens and it's unpredictable, and then you figure it out, and you kind of move on, and it might be perfect and it might not. But it really represents my struggle with parental alienation and just the longing for just smoothness and ease, and everything to go along as planned, and sometime it doesn't. But what a great first part of our conversation, and so many different wonderful takeaways about our community, how people found community, what they're getting out of community. And the second part of the show is just as powerful. And if you would like to learn more about the meetings, there's a link in the show notes, Parental Alienation Anonymous. Come by, check out a meeting. It's a really safe, loving community. You can check out the website, which is Parental Alienation Anonymous .com or pa-a.org. We have a bunch of resources and stuff on there. Thank you for coming out and playing with us today, and sharing in the conversation. Please remember to like, share. We are a 501c3 nonprofit and can use any kind of support. And we'll just let people know that we're around so people can find some extra help. And in case nobody's told you yet today, I love you. I hope you're having a beautiful day. And it's interesting when I say I love you at the end of shows, and then you get to witness a panel and you just see 3 or 4 strangers getting together, having a conversation, rowing their boats in the same direction. And you can kind of see what that means. Like, this love is just a love for community, a love for people, a love for resilience, a love for opportunity, a love for healing, and there's a lot of healing going on and a lot of people getting relationships back with all different forms and strains of family members and kids and parents. And thank you for coming out, and I will see you around the neighborhood.